want to start a flame in your heart. In my heart I have but one desire, and that one is you, no other. I've lost all ambition.
Welcome, everyone, to Greetings from Beyond Radio. It's been a minute. It's actually been close to 7 years since I had to shelve Greetings from Beyond Radio. But before we go any further and talk a little bit about ourselves into the show, I'm Rich Valdez, your host, and my co-host. Wait, over here? Yeah? No?
It depends on which side you show
This
up on
side.
their screen.
Oh, it has to be the opposite side. Is Vicky Burnett, my co-host. Say hi, Vicky.
Hi, everyone.
And that's something I'm gonna have to get used to, going like this. You know, when you're really on this side for me. But anyways, 7 years ago, I started Greetings from Beyond Radio. It was a hit. We had great guests, but around that time was also the time that I had started to train to be a demonologist officially for the United States Old Catholic Church. And that took a lot of time. But, you know, before I go any further, I'm going to hand this over to Vicky so that everyone can get to know her a lot better. And she's already known, she's already on the show. We're not going to name the show, but she's already on a radio show and a podcast. And it's rather successful down south in Florida.
6 years now.
6 years now. See,
we're coming up on our 6-year anniversary.
6-year anniversary. We still got a little bit more about that that we'll get into. But something that occurred to me yesterday, and I was thinking to myself, you know, it's fine. It's kind of weird that we find ourselves in this situation. Storytelling, you know, storytelling has been around for so long, since the dawn of man. This is how we've all gotten to know each other, gotten to know about places and experiences. And it's advanced so much, leaps, years, and everything. You can name it, literally, to radio, TV. Now it's, you know, internet, podcasts. Hello, this is what we're doing now. And ironically, it's the same thing. A podcast, talk show, whatever you want to call it. It's the same old, same old. But before I go any further, let's get to know Vicky. Wait a minute. Let me see. Vicky. I got it right this time. Vicky. And myself. We want to take the opportunity to let everyone know us. After all, we're the ones that you're going to have to see once a week for a while to come. Trust me, this is going to keep on growing and getting bigger and bigger every day. And of course, when it comes to Vicky, Vicky has her own story and her own reasons as to why she got started in the paranormal. And I'm going to let her start, as the old saying goes, ladies first. I'm getting it down.
Okay.
It's so cool.
All right. Well, ironically, in January of 2007, I did not even know that the show Ghost Hunters existed. And they were having a marathon because season 2 was getting ready to begin. So they showed the marathon of season 1. And I'm like, oh, wow, people actually do this. And so I went on, I Googled, I found a TAPS affiliated team that we both are well aware of.
Oh, yeah.
And they were
You can name it. You
okay,
can name it, by the way.
Florida Ghost Team at the time. And she was accepting new people onto the team. And that began, I was on that team for about 7 or 8 months. And then I formed my own team, which is Point Paranormal. And several of the team members from Florida Ghost Team came with me. We got a lot of experience in that very short amount of time because that was when Ghost Hunters and Taps was huge. So anybody with a paranormal problem were contacting Florida Ghost Team. So we were doing 2 investigations a weekend every weekend. And that was a lot of experience in a short amount of time. At that time, she also had started a radio show, which I ended up being the host of. And then when I left Florida Ghost Team, I continued her show and then picked it up for myself for the next year, which we're talking about storytelling and stuff. So the last time I did this where it was completely paranormal, it was on an actual radio station and I had to pay for airtime. So it's a lot different being able to use the podcast format. But one of the main reasons I got into the paranormal is probably not what most people think. I had been in an abusive situation, but I knew who my attacker was. I knew who my abuser was. But people who live in a haunted house, they don't necessarily know who is attacking them, who is affecting their sleep, who is scaring them. And so my goal coming in is to make everyone's home as safe as possible. So that said, sometimes, Rich, we go into homes and what's going on, it's not about a haunt. It's about substance abuse. It's about mental health issues. It may even be about some type of abuse, other types of abuse. So I was able to take all the things that I know about life and all the things I experienced and use it to help people in their home. And like Rich hinted to, I also do a weekly podcast that's been going on for 6 years with a group of people that are very popular here in South Florida. They have a morning show on one of the local radio stations, and we do our podcast every week.
Not only that, but you did hint already on it. I'm going to jump on that. When you started doing Florida Ghost Team's radio show at WBZT, not going to go any further than that, but it's a local radio station in West Palm, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And that was also how many years worth of actual radio experience that you had?
2 years.
2 years.
Yes.
That's pretty good. and oftentimes people seem to think that it's as easy as a podcast. Actually, it's not, because there's so much more involved. You have an actual producer on the other side of the glass, and they have all this technology and keyboards around them, and they tell you quietly, and you're on the air, and bam. It's so much more different nowadays, because now anyone and everyone can actually be their own, I don't know, hosts and producer, although we're lucky enough to have Jen as our producer who's handling everything. So in fact, we're in contact with her at all times during the show. Another thing, I was one of the first ones to start pushing this young lady. I'm getting it. This is cool. All right. To start developing her gift of sight. And it took her a minute. And although I promised no politics ever will be discussed here or religion, but there's a little bit of a reason why you kind of held back on your gift for a while. And it happened to do with not letting someone very special to you down. But finally, you've really gotten into the groove of giving into your gift, honing it, practicing it, so that now Readings by Vicky, which will occasionally flow through the ticker here, take notice of it, ladies and gents, whoever's watching. She gives impeccable readings. And I'm telling you, all you got to do is send her a picture and a question. That's it. And she will give you what you need or whatever spirit tells her. So, Vicky, why don't you expand a little bit more on that? Because you're kind of holding back on me here. We got 2 hours to fill, and you're not filling in. Come on.
Well, the initial way that I feel that my gift was opened up, if you remember, we were doing an OBE, an out-of-body experience.
Right.
And in that, I traveled to the house next door to me because I was always curious as to what was there. And so I saw some things. When we came back, I reported to you. And I noticed after that, I was getting more and more specific information from what I felt were spirits. Now, my experience on Florida Ghost Team also helped, because the more I talked to spirit and was respectful to spirit, they were in kind, helping me open up as well. The day that I figured out I could do readings, it was actually weird. My former boss passed away that day. And one of my colleagues was not at work. And I called her and I said, "Do you know that such and such passed away?" And she said, "Oh, no, I didn't know that. Well, I'm having a bad day too. My roommate, blah, blah, blah." And then all of a sudden I said, "Well, who's that man standing next to her that's blah, 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 looks like this?" And she goes, "That's her dead husband." And I said, "Oh, well, anyway, he said blah, 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 blah." And she goes, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "I don't know." So what I did is, a friend of mine who was on my team, she gathered up people that I did not know, and I didn't even know their names. I just knew that at 5 o'clock, someone from New York, a New York exchange, was going to call my phone and I was going to give them a free reading. And I did that for an entire summer, several nights a week, to make sure that it truly was authentic. And also, you and I had a session where you gave me a test to see where where my gift actually was going to be the strongest, and it's actually the opposite of what happened. If you remember, you tested me on psychometry, and you tested me reading pictures. And psychometry, I was like, this person, and some reason I'm getting this state, and it made sense. The person was from that state, blah, blah, blah. The pictures, I seem to suck at it.
At that time,
I was like, okay, I'm not going to be doing pictures. This is not my thing. I think that part of the reason is I am so concerned at being valid. I'm so concerned at giving a person the most they can get out of a reading. And I want to be accurate. I don't want to add any of that fluff. I don't want to do any fishing. I don't want to do all those things that you hear about psychics doing.
You mean like I'm getting an H, an H. Does
Right.
that ring a bell? Is that what you mean by fishing?
Right. The fishing, things like that.
Right.
And even if I do start off with something and it's a vague thing like that, I will apologize. Now the first thing I'm going to say is very vague, but then I'm going to fine tune it. So I don't want them to, and it won't be me asking them a question vague. It'll be me saying, well, this is the first thing I have. And it may be something very general, but then it turns into something specific.
Right.
So I have my conscience plays a part in what I do as well. I run a lot of very extremely reasonable specials so that it's available, to people in all kinds of, economic demographics. I probably give some of the cheapest and most affordable readings out there. I help paranormal groups who send me pictures. You have sent me things many a time. If it's a location, I'll just say, send me a couple pictures of the inside of the house, and I do virtual walkthroughs. And then I also balance that with free events. So there's times the local radio station did a fundraiser when we had the hurricane in Bahamas, and they were trying to raise money for that. Anybody who donated $50 or more got a free reading. I didn't realize how popular that was going to be because they had to email me, and I ended up with 150 readings. But it was for a good cause.
Wow.
Yeah, it was for a good cause. Yeah, it was daunting trying to get through those, but I'm glad I did it. And some of those ended up being long-term people who, I talk to every 6 months or something like that. I'm not the kind that's going to say, "Oh, you need to call me once a month." No. You call me when you need me, and it's probably not going to be that soon.
And before we go any further, real quick, this is something I should have done at the very beginning of the show. A quick shout out to Matt Barron, who did the videography for the intro. Great job, by the way. And his information is going to be played as one of the commercials when we go on a short little break halfway through, because it is a 2-hour show. And also to my son, Thomas Drake Valdez, who actually did the score, the music for this. He mixed it all up, and he brought it all together. He brought two songs together, and he created that masterpiece as well. He did a great job. Hi, Jenny. How are you, hon? Good to see you on there. And Jenny, I've known forever. I'm actually going to be on her show as a guest on the 22nd. Am I right, Jenny? I think it's 22nd, Sunday. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being on her show. It's going to be a hard act to follow because I hear Nick Groff pretty much brought in a lot of people. I don't think I'm going to bring that many people in, hun, but I'm going to try. There's my cousin from another fussin'.
Bad rhyme.
I ain't Dr. Seuss last time I checked. Hi,
Oh,
Elena.
that was on dad joke level.
I know.
Oh.
I am a dad 3 times over. So, you know, what I find funny, and to everyone here that's already chimed in and said hello, y'all know. Okay, so wait, good preparing to go to Palmer House for an event with Brian and who? Raquel or Richie? I don't know. I don't have my glasses on. But
excuse me. Didn't you brag that you could see the screen?
Yeah, I know. All of a sudden
earlier?
I can't. Hold on. I'm gonna be like my old man here. Oh, it went off. Okay, whatever. I'm not gonna put my glasses on. There's no need. But anyways, if anyone ever really needs a really, really good reading, I really recommend it. Hi, Allison. How are you? I don't know her, but
Allison.
I guess you do.
Actually, Allison is one that took me up on an offer through the other show.
Okay.
And you know, I went to her house. I did it in person. She didn't expect me to show up in person because she lived like an hour away from me. But I had a best friend, and as it turned out, that best friend lived like 2 streets away. So you know, we ended up, you know, giving her reading, and we've been friends ever since.
Vicky, I have one complaint about you, and I know I sound stern. I really don't care. I've known you almost 2 decades. I can do this. Where the hell is Prince?
I took him down. I thought it was too obvious. It looked like he was looking over my shoulder.
That's the whole point.
Okay. I thought I was going to get yelled at for having Prince as another co-host on here. Okay. Y'all just hold on. I will be right back.
No.
No, he's right over here.
At the break.
All right.
Just bring him over, and you know,
right.
I'm just saying, I love that. It was charcoal, right? And it was a picture done of Prince. Vicky, myself, and Tammy are huge fans of Prince. And I'm telling you, when I saw this, we were doing a little testing on StreamYard the other day, and I saw it behind her. I'm like, is that Prince? And she was like, yes, it is. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put my glasses on because it looks like if there's more words, yeah, this happens. Okay. I've known Rich since 2011, and he's been so supportive. I'm glad I was able to nail him down for the interview. Haven't seen Rich since 2000. Has it been that long? Wow, yeah, that is a long time. That's a decade. Even though I've tried to get him to meet up every time I go to Florida or Utah, LOL. You know what's funny is every time she goes to Utah, I'm in Florida. When she goes to Florida, I'm in Utah. So we always keep missing each other. But Jenny Davis, let me tell you, she's a sweetheart of a woman. Love her to death. And she now has her own show. I believe it's called Turning the Page, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me right. And I'm looking forward to being on her show this coming weekend. So everyone, please tune in if you haven't yet. Get to know her page. So so now that we got the Prince thing out of the way, and we got Jenny Davis and our history together, and how long we've known each other, and how I can actually do it this time and get away with it. Missed each other. Sometimes she's in Florida, sometimes she's in Utah, and I'm the other way around. So it just, the universe has not seen it fit for us to just, hook up and see each other and meet her daughter, and have her daughter meet, Jen's and my daughter. So, it's just the way things have worked out. But, you've done a lot more work. You're holding back on me, Vicky. You really are. I'm disappointed in you because I know for a fact you've worked some cold cases.
Yes.
You didn't want to talk about that, did you?
Well, I mean, it was on the down low for someone
You
who
don't have
worked.
to talk about details, but you could
Yeah, but
talk about.
just the reason why, I mean, it was, I don't consider it a huge um success, so to speak, but I do say that one of them involved a murder. The body had not been found, and I was within 2 miles of where the body was, and the area looked like I described it. The only difference is I was kind of on the other side of the highway, so it put it 2 miles difference. But all the other components that were in there, um, that's where they found the body.
Okay. No, and I totally understand you not being able to go into detail when it comes to cold cases because, it's a case, it's a police, you know, when the police get involved, that's totally different. But let me tell you something. Um, it's, I find it fascinating that your gift has actually gotten to that point to where that's all you really need. So, give us some more as to how do you use your gift during an actual case for point?
I always stay clear of any information prior to the investigation. So I have a client care representative who will interview the client, and I go in cold. So when I go in, I do a walkthrough of the property, and that's just where I'm going to get my initial sense of what kind of spirit and um, who they are, why they might be there. Now, because it's an official point case, it's not used as evidence.
Okay, but who actually? Because you can't come in contact with that information.
Right.
It has to be your case manager, correct?
Correct.
All
She's the
right.
one who does the interview.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, so although I encourage everybody on my team to develop their gift. So of course, the person who has interviewed the client already has prior knowledge, but everybody else will go ahead and do their walkthrough. They'll take notes or they'll put it on their recorder. And then at some point we will come together and we will compare notes. That's usually after we've conducted our first EVP session. We try not to let our psychic impressions gear our very first EVP sessions.
Right.
Then we'll meet, we'll discuss what our findings were, what our impressions were, and then we're going to gear the next EVP sessions based on our intuition and what we picked up to see if that helps get us more responses.
What's funny? Go on.
And then the client gets an official report. They're going to get any EVPs that we captured, and they're going to have a special section that's going to be entitled Psychic Impressions. And I put all disclaimers on there that it is simply not used as evidence, but this is what our psychics picked up during the investigation. Just, it's kind of like additional information, but it's not what we're basing our decision on as to what is in the house.
Who does historical on your team?
Bobby Joe usually does it. She'll do extensive background, and that's done after the investigation.
Okay.
I try to keep as many people out of any kind of, because I have very gifted people on my team, I try to keep as much knowledge from them as I can so that the only person who really has a lot of info is the person who interviewed the client.
The case manager.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So basically what you've created is like a team full of psychic mediums.
I encourage them to develop their gifts. If you remember when we were on the previous team that we both were on, she, the founder director, was the psychic medium at that time, and she discouraged me to develop my gift. And that's why, as a team leader, I've always encouraged my people to develop it. I am not the be all to end all. Anybody who has had a reading with me knows the first thing I say, take what I say with a grain of salt. I don't pretend like I know everything. And same thing as going in and doing a walkthrough of a client's residence. I'm not the be all to end all. Somebody else may pick up on something that I didn't pick up on. And I want to encourage them to develop their gift.
I've always felt that, and not casting shade on the way you've developed your team. If it works, it works. It is what it is. I've always felt that in any team, there needs to be someone grounded, someone that's not out there like you guys are, feeling it out, spiritually speaking, but grounded enough to be able to say, hey, let's reel it back in a little bit. And
well, I'm that person. Actually, I'm very concrete,
really,
and I'm very
okay,
scientific. I will be the first one to say, okay, I pick up on this person over there, but that has nothing to do with the way we're going to gather this evidence. This has nothing to do with saying whether this place has a spirit in it or not. I am very scientific in the approach to analyze what we're looking at to give the client the best information.
right. And I've, okay, and you know this about me. I'm very empathic, but I keep my empathic on the down low because I feel that it helps me during the interview process with the client. It gives me an edge, if you will. And I feel that having learned over the years how to shut it down, I think I've only had 2 occasions where I was not able to shut it down, and it was actually triggered because it was a demonic case. And as you have come across some demonic cases here and there, they know more about you and they know all the buttons to push. And let me tell you, it's never fun. Especially you kind of feel out of control. That's when I have to do some of my grounding. Elena, I'm still trying to figure out my gifts. So Elena, who better to ask?
Wait. I was going to say, since she's the very first person who
Yeah.
sent a message specifically asking, go ahead and send, where do you want her? Do you want her to send an email to me and I'll hook her up with a free reading? You want her to be the very first 15-minute freebie, and I'll see, because that's one of the things that I do in a reading. If a person is interested in what their gift is, I can usually tell them where that lies. So if you're interested, let me know.
What do you think, Elena? Are you on board? Waiting to see if she responds.
Or we can keep talking while we're waiting.
Yeah.
I may have just scared her off. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think she responded there. Hold on. Let me see. She's interested.
All right.
There you go. All right. So, Elena, what you do is, as you can see, there's a ticker that is streaming across the screen right now. And as I'm reading, it says find readings by Vicky at https://www.facebook.com readings by
Vicky. Just make sure you spell Vicky correctly, because I think there's one that spells it with just an I. So just send me a message on there, or you can send me an email. This should be a pretty easy email to remember. It's Nancy, Nancy 38 Drew DREW at AOL.com. Either way, we'll get you your free 15 minutes.
When was the last time you all heard AOL? Just thought I'd say that.
Yeah, my daughter makes fun of it too, and guess what? Hers is AOL.
Oh my God. Let's see. We have someone else saying hi, Vicky.
Hi.
Parish?
Oh, she's one of my loyal fans from the other podcast that I do. And this is how loyal and great she is. She showed up at my door yesterday with kettle corn from the South Florida Fair. And I'm not talking a little bag. I'm talking a bag this big. Yeah.
Oh God. The last time I actually had a kettle corn, let me see. It was, or actually any kind of corn for that matter, was back in 1994. And That's when I first discovered of diverticulosis, and I've not been able to have corn or any form of nuts or seeds ever since. Life sucks. So, what are you gonna do? Anyway, um, we already got you a brand new customer there.
It's a
Elena's a
freebie.
sweetheart.
It's a
It's a
freebie.
freebie, yes. And Elena, please do me and Vicky a favor. Join us again next week and let us know how that reading went. Because let me tell you something. I'll tell you right now, and Vicky knows this. When I need someone to turn to, and it has to involve something that has to do with the paranormal, there's only, as the old saying goes, who you gonna call? Vicky. And she's the bomb, and she knows what she's doing. And the thing is I wanted to ask you this because I'm always paying attention to what you say. You say when spirit, and you also said spirits, okay, commune. But when you speak to spirit, are you referring to the spirit that's coming through, or
Yes.
is there a spirit guide that
Mhm.
helps you commune? No. So
No,
there's no in
I
between that.
speak directly to whomever the person wants to hear from. So
Okay.
it's directly, and to be honest, and some people will say, "Oh, that's eh." I don't even know who my spirit guides are. I do not speak to them. I don't communicate with them. They're there. They have to be.
Yeah.
But I'm just not. I can see other people's spirit guides. I don't see my own personal spirit guides. My friend Bobby Joe, she always jokes that, and people like, are you always bothered, or spirits always talking to you? No, I only read when I am supposed to read. Um, she said it's like I have bodyguards with those velvet ropes, back in the day to get into the club with the velvet ropes,
Yeah.
and they know when to open the rope and to let the person in that's supposed to speak to me. And I'm very, very lucky that way. The only spirits that have ever bothered me when they weren't supposed to, ironically, was Bobby Joe's grandmother and her uncle, who, after a reading, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth across my bed, talking all night to each other. So,
There you go. Elena just said I sent a message on your Facebook Messenger, Vicky. So there
all
you
right.
have it.
Yep. There it is.
Okay. And you will get your reading. If there are any other takers, please feel free. As far as I'm concerned, just the fact that we're live right now and people are watching us, and I was expecting just one or two, to be honest with you, and we got five. I've even seen it as far as seven. That's great. I'm thrilled with this. But I want people to know more about. I know what got you started into investigating the paranormal, but did you have what was your first paranormal experience? Personal paranormal experience. I don't care how far back it was, just say it.
I honestly, growing up, I don't remember, except for the fact that I had an imaginary friend, and his name was Tabby Toey.
How young were you?
Um, I would say I knew Tabby Toey between the ages of 4 and 6, and I don't. I remember what he looks like, exactly what he looks like. I mean, I must have been pretty. If I made him up, I mean, come on, his name was Tabby Toey. I was pretty imaginative. But I used to play with him and he would talk to me. I guess supposedly I used to freak my sister out by
Mm,
talking about Tabby Toey and that he was in the room with us. And she said that I was very serious and she got a little spooked. But other than that, honestly, I didn't have a lot of experiences until I started investigating the paranormal. And then that's when all the things opened up and all these different experiences happened. But prior to that, I loved Scooby Doo. I loved my friend Barry, every single house we went by, and we're like, oh, that looks spooky. That must be haunted. But as far as experiencing anything, not much. I mean, I had a house one time that I woke up, it was early on a Sunday, and there was a music box playing. Problem is, I didn't own a music box. Um, and one time I took a shower. When I came out of the shower, the faucet was running. And I yelled at the spirit because my water bill was very expensive where I used to live. So I'm like, if you want my attention, do it something else. But it was nothing major, nothing like to really alarm me or, anything like that. I actually, growing up, was kind of a scaredy cat. And I probably would have, if I had too many of them, I would have run screaming. My friends would drag me to horror movies and I'd have to sleep on my parents' floor. And but one night I was on the floor scared and I started to talk to God. And I said, I don't want to be afraid anymore. And it felt exactly like he took his arms and put them around me. I was engulfed in this warmth. I have not been afraid since that day.
You know, it's funny when you mentioned the age that you started with your imaginary friend, 4 to 6, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. This New Year's Eve, um, although Jen has claimed that our daughter Trinity has been saying this for at least 2 years, I was very close to my aunt Eliana. She, as you know, she was Down syndrome. She passed away several years back, and ironically, her death date's coming up. We buried her on Valentine's Day, but she died 2 days before that. Long story short, um, I overheard my daughter saying, "I'm playing with my friend Yana, Yana," and I was like, "Yana," and Jen looked at me and she said, she's had that imaginary friend for like 2 years now. You've never heard her say that? You've heard her say that?" And I said, "No." And I started thinking about it. I don't know why. It just, as my mind just, Scorpio, can't help it. Started thinking about it. And I said, Yana sounds very much like Eliana. And I was very close to my aunt Eliana due to the fact that she was, you know, Down syndrome. Tammy and I helped take care of her every weekend. And when she died, I was there. When she took her last breath, it was hospice. My heart broke. Um, Needless to say, I'm here thinking to myself, and since I do have a psychic medium here as my co-host, hi. Um, could it be that because I have this hunch, thinking, is that my aunt that she's been talking to this whole time, playing with?
More than likely, children before the age of 7 are way more open to the other side than we are. If you have a relative that you were attached to, of course, they're going to be very attached to any of your offspring. Because she's under the age of 7, she has natural ability that has not been stifled. And that's the problem, is usually by the age of 7, we have inadvertently stifled our ability. Nobody
Unfortunately.
really nobody really does it on purpose, but when your kid said there's a monster under the bed, you say, no, 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 there's not. And there might be a spirit under the bed, but you don't want to tell them the truth. So more than likely, she has actually, she's covered your daughter up when she's kicked her covers off. So she's very protective and she watches over for safety type issues. Just so you know.
Fascinating. It's weird because she predominantly sleeps still with mommy and daddy for now. But I wouldn't be able to tell you if she has or has. Maybe that's why she prefers sleeping out of the covers, because she's gotten used to the cold. Because right now it's freezing, by the way. I think it's like in the upper 30s here in Utah. But at night it drops even more, and we don't keep the heater on because unless you want to feel like a Thanksgiving turkey, that's what you're going to feel. Even though the bedroom is in the basement, you still will feel it and you will sweat. But that would explain why she's always kicking her own uh, blankets off. Interesting. And it actually and I'll admit it, it made me cry because uh, I miss her very much. And as you know, my father died recently. As far as I can't believe it's been a year, but he died August 2nd, 2021, and I'm still grieving in the grieving process with the loss of my father. But to know that Eliana's watching over her, that's refreshing. Do you feel that your mom is watching over you or your daughter or your sons?
No,
No.
not in particular. I don't read for myself, number
Okay.
one. I have too much of an invested interest. My mom primarily visits in dreams. That's
Okay.
her form. She very much wanted to go to what I call the other side, what she called heaven.
Right.
I think that she was a good mom. She went above and beyond. And I think she is taking advantage of the fact that she is on the other side and she can rest. Because when we go to the other side, we have options and we have freedoms. And some people choose to come back in visitation and spend a lot of their time in that. Some people choose to stay over there. Some people split their time evenly. It just depends on the person and what their preferences are. But I think that my personal opinion is that my mom spends most of her time on the other side.
You know what's funny? I've heard it said, and I actually do believe this theory, that when we pass on, we do have the choice to move on to the greater beyond, be it, in the presence of God, heaven, actually anywhere you are, we're in the presence of a greater power, God, whatever you choose to make it. But I remember years back, my mentor and dear friend of mine, Bishop Long, we were at an event together, and it was the first time all day into the night that we actually had 10-15 minutes, something like that, to sit down. And this was at the Kenilworth Lodge down in Florida. Sit down and have no one, I mean, not a soul, pass by and ask to take a picture with him or have me take a picture of him with the individual. And I asked him, Bishop, there's been an ongoing belief, not only on my side, but also within the paranormal, that we paranormal investigators only communicate with demons portraying to be human. I'm sure you've heard this before. Come on now.
Mhm.
But the funny thing is the person that put me in place and answer my question was, of all people, a bishop for the old Catholic Church. And he said, Rich, let me ask you a question. What is it that God made about us that is so different? And I was like, I don't know. He made us in the image of God. And he's like, no, 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 no. Something else. It just wouldn't come to me. And he said, free will. Free will. And he stated, where does it state that our free will is taken away from us when we die? He has a point there. And that made me think. I mean, a huge light bulb actually just popped up on top of my head. And I was thinking to myself, good God, he's right. So yes, I do agree with you. I believe that when we pass on from this flesh, do have the choice to actually stay or go or come back. We're free to come and go as we please. Because I know I've had dreams of my grandfather, my dad, my grandmother, people that have passed on, and I know it's them visiting me. I just have that feeling because I can smell them. I smell what they used to wear as perfume or cologne. When it's my grandfather, I smell cigars. When it's my grandmother, I smell that rose perfume. When it's my dad, it's his baritone voice that I hear coming through, and I see him. Um, those dreams that you've had, how do you know for sure it's just not a generic dream that you're having of your mom because you miss her, or that it's really her coming through?
Well, the one most significant dream that I had, there was a problem when she passed away. My sister was causing some problems, and the will was being contested, and all these other things. So I believe that my mom was hanging around a little bit to make sure everything was fine. So after everything was completed, my sister lost her case. My kids and I, we bought our new house, and everything was settled. I went to bed one night And in the dream, my mom was there and the kids were there. And I said, well, are you going to go out to eat with us after church? And she said, well, I don't have that much longer, but we'll see. And my ex was there and she gave him a hug and she forgave him for everything he had ever done. And then a car pulls up, and in the car is my dad, who died many, many years before her.
Mm-hmm.
And she looks up and she goes, my ride's here.
Oh, look at that.
And my dad came out of the car, took her over to her side, put her in the car, and the car drove away into like a movie, into this sunset type of thing. And I knew that was her way to say, everything's settled. Now it's time for me to rest. She comes in dreams in times where I need that little extra something to know that I'm not alone. It may be a silly dream. It may not have anything to do with her specifically, but she'll just be in the background somewhere.
Right.
And I think that's just her saying, I'm here. I know that you got some stuff going on, but I'm here.
It's funny how they can be so, what's the word I'm looking for? In the background, but kind of you also just being in the background and not really being in the forefront of everything. They are there. They're there for a reason. How many of you in the chat room have had dreams, by the way? I don't want to leave everyone out here. I know you guys are here to get to know us, but how many in the chat room have actually had dreams of deceased loved ones? And please write in the chat, and Jen will get your message through to us and share with us. That's one of the other reasons that I wanted to get Greetings from Beyond Radio started again, is because oftentimes people get shows started just to have it be about them. And sure, it's about them because we're the hosts. But one of the things that Vicky and I agreed on was making it about you and including you. We don't want you to feel like you've been excluded. We want you included. We need you guys to put your 2 cents worth. And write in the chat if you've had dreams of deceased loved ones that have passed on. Do you feel they were trying to bring you a message? And if they were, do you think it was actually spot on? We'd love to hear from you. So tell us a little more about Point, because every time I've spoken to you, you always have a freaking case going on, 1 or 2. I know for a fact a few weeks ago, I had asked for some assistance on a case that was taking place in Florida. And you were like, I just can't. I got 2 cases that I can't drive that far. Screw you. You're
right now. Excuse me, you're paraphrasing, and I don't talk like that. Okay. No, you know what? My theory has been from day one. I've never really advertised. I have a legitimate website. I don't just advertise on Facebook. I have the real website. I do have the exposure on being on the other podcasts where I'll mention my services. But my theory has always been, I don't think I need to advertise my free services as a paranormal investigator, but the people who need me will find their way to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that is evidenced by how many cases end up in our laps.
I find that to be fascinating. Oh, there is one. I definitely have dreamt about family members that have passed. Vicky has helped me with these dreams. She has helped me navigate the dreams and is on point. Pun intended, because that's the name of your team. So apparently you have someone here that you've helped already when it comes to loved ones that have passed on, come to her in a dream. And you don't have to go into detail. I totally understand, being keeping that confidential.
One of my services is I am constantly doing dream interpretation for people. That stuff is like, a friend of mine would say, oh, I had this wacky dream, and she'll type it all out to me. And I go, well, this is what this means, blah, 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 blah. So that's just one of the other services that I offer.
Elena says, I've had a visit from my uncle that had passed away before my last heart surgery. And I believe this was when I was in the induced coma. And he had brought another gentleman with him, telling me to keep fighting on, not give up. And when I mentioned to my mom that moment, she asked me what the other man looked like. And I explained, and come to find out, it was my grandfather that had passed when I was 6 months old.
You know, there's so many times in readings where someone will come across,
Thank
a
you,
spirit
Elena.
will come across, and I'll describe them, and the person will say, well, that sounds like my great grandmother, but I never met her. And family's family.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you ever met them. They are fully aware that you exist, and they are there. And in some ways, they have the advantage of being on the other side. Because if you know, let's just say you had a relative that lived in California and you live in Florida and you have something going on in your life, if they're physically in California, they're going to have a hard time helping you. If they're spirit, they're going to be right there by your side. You just have to be open to their presence and to feel the comfort that they're providing you.
I have to agree with you there. And oftentimes we don't even realize that we don't know how to be open. So sometimes when we're sleeping in that meditative state is when we are most open to their messages through dream. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, dream. I always tell people, they'll ask me, you know, I had this dream. Was it really them? I said, most likely it is, because that's the easiest way for them to communicate, because we're not fighting back and forth. We're not saying, oh, that's not really happening, or, oh, I must be hallucinating. Must have been the pizza that I ate. When you're in your dream state, you're receptive to those messages and you're going to be able to receive them better.
I will admit, though, when I've had naps after I've had some meals, some really bad meals, I've had some really bad nightmares. That's all I'm going to say. From Allison Yates, that's me, Vicky. All my wacky dreams, Brandy.
Yeah, that's Brandy with the wacky dreams there.
Well, you know, be it however it may come, this is one certain way. I've wondered, I wonder if people have ever experimented during investigations, clients going to sleep and actually running I know I've done it through video, but actually a recorder to see if spirit is coming through, communicating with them when they're dreaming.
Yeah. There was this one particular case we had years ago, and we had a client that did not sleep until we came there on the weekends. We went 7 weekends in a row. And we set up audio and video in the bedroom, because she kept saying that she would just get to the point of falling asleep and she would hear like this sound that would wake her up and this, that, and the other, but she never heard the sound during the day, or this would happen. And we were actually able to confirm that those sounds were happening. There was not a logical explanation, that it was some type of spirit in her house, and they were trying to keep her from falling asleep. Now, she slept like a baby when we were there, though, because she knew we were watching and ready to jump in if anything were to happen.
That's kind of rude. I mean, I personally, man, I need my ugly sleep. So, you know, if someone comes in and starts interrupting my sleep, we're going to have issues. Parrish, is there other ways to tune in other than while you're sleeping?
You just have to be open to what's going on around you. I always recommend the first thing a person does is close their eyes. If you have eliminated your sense of sight, then your other senses are heightened. And guess what? You're more likely to physically feel spirit or to hear them than you are to see them, typically.
Well, you know, we're going to have to pick up on that when we come back from our commercial breaks. And we'll talk a little bit more about you and a little bit more about me. But we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere.
Prince.
Definitely, you better bring Prince. And we're back. Kind of, sort of. There's a... And Prince!
Prince.
All right.
Well, let's give a shout out as we're coming back from commercial. Let's
Definitely.
give Jen a shout out for all of this, getting us on here, doing the commercial, getting all this stuff put together. Can she pop up here on the screen for a minute and let everybody see the magic that is her? Is she shy?
She's being shy. I kind of see her on the bottom screen, but she's not showing up yet. She'll be here in just a few seconds.
I like to give credit where credit's due. Here she is.
Agree. I agree.
I like to give credit. So far, this is looking professional, for sure.
Can't hear you. No, still can't. Oh, no. There. Okay, there we are. All right.
Got it. Yeah. I'm on two different computers here, so yeah. See, I'm kind of over here.
I just wanted to give her credit for all the hard work she's doing just to make it possible for us to sit here and talk.
Yeah, if it wasn't for her, we'd be nowhere right now, because she's gonna have to walk me through this one day.
Yeah, I'm still learning myself, so
Well,
we're
good job.
slowly getting there.
Good job.
Definitely. And Jen,
Huh?
meet Prince.
I actually like that painting. That is a very nice painting.
It's not a painting though.
It's-
ironically,
Yeah, it's charcoal. A friend of mine did it. Her name is Araceli.
Oh.
She always works in big canvases, so she had to kind of give me one that would fit in my house, because she's done ones like whole walls before. And I have been waiting for this. So I met her like in 2016, and I've been waiting. It was just the right time. I got her where she was inspired. I sent the original picture in as to which one I wanted her to do, and it is spot on. So she's a great artist.
next
I
show.
really like it.
Next show, what we should do, and if you can, get a close up of Prince, because I see detail, but I'm sure if it was up to the camera, people would really be able to see it. Put out her.
Well, you can really see it now.
Let's see if I put him
Oh,
too
wow,
close. See, it's
that
rather
is
large.
huge.
See his eyes?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's look at his, even like his throat. Like look at the detail.
He's got the Adam's apple.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is and another shout out from Elena. Good job, cuz I think one of the things we should do for the next show is, Vicky, when you have the opportunity to give us this artist's information, we would, post it down in the ticker so that people can actually, get her to do something for them that they really want done.
Yeah, she doesn't do a whole lot. She does it mostly for friends and things like that. But I can definitely reach out to her and see if she wants her information out there for sure. But yeah,
Let's
she's
see.
phenomenal.
Allison, I've gotten used to the noises, knocks, shadows, and voices in the house. LOL. We're all friends. So, thank you, Jen. Thank you. And to what Allison Yates just said, and this is just my personal preference. I prefer to live in a ghost free zone, especially demon free zone, being I'm a demonologist as well. And I always take every precautionary measure that, let's say, just for argument's sake, unless it's a welcomed visit from a deceased loved one, which I don't mind. But if it's someone that I don't know and they happen to be staying in my home, that's a big no for me. That's just me.
Right.
But how do you feel about that when it comes to?
My home has always been like don't bother me zone. You can set up rules. There's an author that I love. She wrote 2 paranormal books, Linda Alice Dewey. And when she first started having these spirits visit her home in order to tell their story about how they had become earthbound and then went to the other side, her son accidentally saw a spirit one day. And she didn't think anything about letting them in her house until that day.
Okay.
And then she set up the parameters. If you want to tell the story, I'll meet you at the edge of the woods, at the edge of her property, and we can do our sessions there, but you're not allowed in the home. There was another famous psychic who she would confine them to the dining room because she would walk through the house at first and she'd go around a corner and she'd bump into somebody unexpected. And she finally said, listen, you want to talk to me? You stay in the dining room and I'll get to you. So you can set up rules just like you would with anything else in life. You set up the rules and the parameters of when they can communicate and what they can do. Now, to have a completely spirit-free home, good luck. There's more spirits around us than there are living, breathing humans. Right now, I probably have, probably 10 to 15 spirits here watching this show.
Well, last time I checked, you're not Allison Dubois, but and thank God for that, because you'd be pulling your hair out of your head. That being said, I remember a case. This happened around, I'd have to say, 8 years back. And it was a case that came to the attention of Paranormal Consulting Agency, which happens to be my team back in Florida. And this client was dealing with, let's just say, it was a subway station of spirits going through her home. And as time went by, and we went there at least, I'd say 6 times, I started realizing she was a sensitive. And it's not that it was her fault or anything like that. It's just her gift. She just didn't know how to control it. So naturally, they would come through like a subway station all the time, trying to communicate with her and communicating with her youngest son at that time, and eventually her baby girl as well. And I had to actually train her on how to meet with her outside of the house, kind of like what you just said. And I told her what you could do, and it's a suggestion. Because if you put salt on the outside of the house, problem is that a good rain, and if anyone's ever been in Florida, it can rain at any time. The sun could be out shining hot and you're glistening in your own sweat, and then just like that, it starts raining out of nowhere. It'll wash the salt away. So I told her, put it on the inside of your doorway and on the inside of your windowsills, and it should be left out. No spirits should be coming in after that. And you know what? It started working for her. And I started helping her learn how to meditate, ground herself before going through with these things. And she said it was exhausting. She would be out there sometimes 2.5 hours, and it was one spirit after the other, after the other. And oftentimes, what people don't understand is spirits just want to get their story across to you. They just need a, listening ear. They need someone to hear them out. They don't need to. Sometimes what feels like a haunt to you is really their way of trying to get your attention so they can, give you a message. Am I right about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always tell my clients, you're basically a big giant bug light for spirits.
Yeah.
They're attracted to you, and
Yeah.
they're always going to be attracted to you. There have been houses that, if things get particularly bad, we may do a cleansing and it'll be good for 6 months or so. But then at some point, it's probably going to pick back up because you're the bug light. And they just have to, with what I've done with a lot of people who are bug lights, as I call them, with chronically spirited homes,
Mm-hmm.
is I basically just give them the knowledge of what is going on and give them peace of mind about what they're dealing with. And then they learn how to deal with it.
Agreed. Just looking at our chat right here, a big shout out from Parish Duval. That Prince piece is amazing.
Yeah.
And Elena, she was told to put railroad nails on all four corners of her property. I've never heard of that one. I've only heard of salt. I've heard of placing blessed metals on north, south, east, and west, digging a hole and actually putting it in there. Have you ever heard of anything like that? Railroad nails.
No, I've never heard. Probably the most out there thing that I've ever heard of is putting the lemons in each corner of every room to soak up any kind of negativity and then negative energy. I've never heard the railroad thing.
Okay. Well, I'm not casting shade on it because for all we know, it's something that actually does work.
I'm open to learn anything I can learn. So.
Oh, big shout out to Katie Turner, good friend of mine. I was on her show, Richard Rulins, and her show sometime last year, was it? Or the year before? I'm not sure. Thank you for joining in. I appreciate it. Great person, by the way. Elena, I never did it. I thought it sounded funny. If to that, if it doesn't sound right, don't do it. That's your gut.
Right.
Trust your gut.
And that's why I tell people who want to do cleansings of their own home, no, call someone who has some experience. I can't tell you how many times somebody has contacted me after they decided to sage their own house.
Yeah.
And they call in a panic. And I'm like, yeah, it's because you saged your own house. Now let's figure out what's going on. And it's very important too, when you ever decide to do a cleansing, you can't think of it as pest control. You
Right.
can't treat for bugs if you have roaches, like ants and roaches, difference. So you need to figure out exactly what's going on. You yourself can attest to the fact, if you had something demonic and you go in with your little rinky dink, human spirit cleansing, you're going to kick it off big time.
Don't get me started on that because I'm telling you, oh man.
So it's unfortunately, people, there's a good side to Google and there's a negative side. For the most part, Googling, your own cleansing methods can be actually dangerous sometimes.
What's the name of that book? God, it's been around forever. Something for dumb people.
Oh yeah, and there's all kinds. There's computers for dummies and all kinds of ones like that. Yeah.
And there has to be a Google for Dummies. And my goodness, the questions I've been asked over the years that have literally raised that brow, it's a no. I'm like, how, what, who moved the rock? Seriously, right. Who told you this? Because that's the equivalency of saying, you know how to put out a fire, you add gas to it. And I'm thinking to myself, no.
Yeah.
Bad. But often
they need to think of it as important as if you're, especially here in Florida, if your air conditioning breaks. Are you going to take it off and try to fiddle with it? I don't think so. Not in Florida. With your air conditioning, you're going to call a professional. You're going to call someone who's been working on air conditioners a few years. So the same thing. I understand people get themselves into situations where they're scared and they may even be desperate. And so they do. They start Googling and they start looking. And honestly, that's how people find you and I. You might find us in a Google search to help. What I would just caution people is anything that's a self-help kind of situation when it comes to spirits, be very, very cautious before you try anything on your own.
I agree. One of the things, and this is something that's actually stuck in my craw for the longest time, has been hearing of people saying, I saged my home to get rid of this negative spirit and demons. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so now correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't think I am, because I've pretty much spoken to just about every, new agey practitioner out there, and I pretty much know how things work. But every single time I've asked them this question, and it hasn't been often, it only takes me once or twice to say, I get it. Do you use sage when getting rid of demons or really nasty spirits, human spirits from your home? And they immediately have stopped me and said, no, you use sage to remove negative energy left by the living. Mm-hmm. Okay.
You can also use sage to smudge yourself when leaving an investigation, because that will help prevent something from following you. Correct. But generally speaking, absolutely not. That's not what it's for.
And I hear this all the time. It's just not, people coming to me or my team or yours. I also hear it all the time. And hi, Courtney from Paranormal United Network, Parallax One. That's the network that we're working through. I hear it on radio shows and I see it on TV too. This is the part that really ticks me off. There's a lot of people out there that use this during a show to get rid of demons, to get rid of belligerent spirits and human spirits in their home. You're wasting your time. You're just blowing smoke in their air, in their face, and they're going,
well, it's more than wasting their time. You're pissing off whatever's there.
Yeah.
We were very careful in the inception of Point when it came to cleansings. And we would do controlled experiments using sage initially for that purpose to test it.
Right.
And what we found consistently across the board, when you sage your property, you're going to have peace for 3 days at most. Because I kind of use the analogy, because it smells like pot. They're kind of chilled out. They're kind of like just, they're mellow for 3 days. What happens after the 3 days and the high's gone, just like if you're coming down and you get the munchies, they got the munchies, and they are going to start acting up with a vengeance.
Guess who the munchies are?
Exactly. So that's why it's important. Like, mine isn't just personal opinion. These were actual controlled experiments that my team and I did.
Yeah.
To make sure that I was giving correct information and using the right techniques. Our purpose is to not make things worse. The whole point we're going in is to make it better.
Exactly.
Not worse for the person.
And there's something to be said about that. That has also gone by the wayside over the years. Um, Back in the day when I first started, I'm talking back in the 80s, and I'm sorry to go that far back. But when I started paranormal investigating, it was pretty much with a Polaroid camera and a tape recorder. Okay. When I say tape recorder, it actually required a tape cassette inside the recorder. Okay. With a lead tape. And that is unheard of nowadays. Everything is digital. But I actually went to an abandoned location at that time in 1987. Okay. I want you to go far, far back. 1987. Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables, Florida. It was abandoned. It was closed up, boarded up, but there was a way in. And I went in there and I went all the way to the very tippy top. I had to pass a lot of homeless people, unfortunately, but I tried. I got no evidence whatsoever. None. First time out. I'm just being honest. But that being said, that was the research part of things. As time went by, I did start getting evidence little by little. And then shortly after that, a few years later, I started my demonology training under my pastor, Frank Marzullo, as a religious demonologist. And that's where the conflict came in. But that's for another time and another show. What I've discovered is that there is a very important balance that must be kept when it comes to the paranormal investigating side of things. Not only are we trying to help people, which is paramount when it comes to both your team, Vicky, and mine, but we also have to remember we're researching, we're applying scientific methodology. And I want people to understand this. Scientific methodology is understanding what an EMF stands for, what EVP stands for, what and how it affects different fields and the theories behind them. We're trying to actually make these fact. So you got to test it out. I also go as far as when my team goes into a location, we also have the moon phase. We also take barometric pressure. Do you guys know what barometric pressure is and how it can possibly more than likely affect a spirit coming through? Not too many people know this. That the one thing I've discovered, and this is something I've discovered, so I'm always paying attention. And I don't know if you have, I'm going to ask you, Vicky, and everyone in the chat room. When you first come in and there's really nothing going on, everything is quiet, you're setting all your equipment up. Have you or have you not noticed? Because I have, at least me, barometric pressure drops. Very much like when you're in an airplane and your ears pop, okay? That's usually when we get the EVPs. That's usually when we get some kind of photographic evidence. And it also happens to be when the barometric pressure machine that I use drops. So that means that when you're in the presence of a spirit and the barometric pressure machine drops, there's something in there with you that you can't see. And EMF, for those that don't know what EMF stands for, is electromagnetic field. Now, when the field fluctuates, it also theoretically is believed that there's a spirit nearby. But I remember back in the day when K2 meters didn't even exist. Do you even recall, Vicky, what machine was used back then?
We didn't use anything back then.
You didn't use anything back then.
In Florida Ghost Team, we didn't use anything.
Are you kidding? That's where I started using it in Florida Ghost Team. And I was in Florida Ghost Team before you. We used cell sensors. And the cell sensor, ironically, is what electricians use in order to find all the wiring on the wall.
She didn't use one until one of my future team members, who I took with me on my team, she bought a very expensive one. So if she had one back when you were there, I don't know who that belonged to, but we didn't have one until my team member brought one on Florida Ghost Team.
Well, and look, it's funny. I started my paranormal investigating by myself long before I joined Florida Ghost Team. I simply joined Florida Ghost Team back in 2003 because I wanted to know what it was like to work with a team. I had always done this by myself. I had always applied scientific methodology and all the different things, even the flour and talcum powder. I don't know if you've ever used that, Vicky, to see if there were any prints left behind by a spirit. I used that, okay. But I wanted to see how teams actually worked. Okay. And I started learning more of what not to do with clients, not so much investigations, but with clients when it came to being with Florida Ghost Team. Now, not trying to cast shade on the founder, but she wasn't a people person. That's why she had other people there like you and me to be people persons, because she was rough around the edges. I love her to death. I hope and pray she's still alive.
I mean, if this gets out there, we could put, please, if you're out there, reach out to one of us. We really want to know that you're still with us.
Yeah,
we really do. Because you know what, we say these things and we may have learned some things not to do or whatever, but the fact is, I will state it, I wouldn't be where I am sitting here right now today if it weren't for her. Because she is what, and her team and her exposure and being a TAPS affiliated is what got me my experience.
Kudos and amen to that. We're not naming names because, quite frankly, it's out of respect. But she was the one that blazed the first trails in the state of Florida and actually brought a blip to the state of Florida when it came to paranormal investigating as far back as 2002. And I joined a year after she had just started her team. And she was the first TAPS affiliated paranormal team in the whole state of Florida. I had no idea. To be honest with you, I was with her for a good year, and I always saw TAPS on there, but I never put two and two together that TAPS was what we now still refer to as ghost hunters. And we were working very much like you. I remember we were working 2, maybe 3 cases because we had that many people joining, and I had to manage 2 cases while she managed 1, and literally keep in touch through a cell phone. Yeah. And that was, wow. I mean, we were everywhere. And I'm sure you know what that was like.
We had one night where I was in one location with her and a couple people. We had another group in another location, and we met up that night at a third location to do 3 cases in that one night.
Elena Stauffer, sorry, my bad. Stauffer Shields says, dowsing rods, those are pretty devices that people used before electronic devices, right? And yes,
they still do.
They still do, but if you know a little bit of the history on dowsing rods, they were actually used to find water. Mm-hmm. And that is theoretically now, and it's been for some years now in the paranormal field, used to find spirits. I'm kind of on the fence about that one.
I had never used them in investigating until last year when I stayed at the Stanley Hotel. And I went on the ghost tour at the Stanley Hotel. And they take you over to a separate building that is the theater.
By the way, I hate you because you went to the one place that I want to go to that's on my bucket list. Go on.
Anyway, hate you too. So when you're over there, they give everybody the opportunity to, hold on to the dowsing rods. And so a couple people are doing it and nothing's happening. So of course they hand it to me. And so first you do like this, right, to clear any other energy. And so I'm holding them and I start asking questions, and I'm specific. If you are here, make them go all the way around. So I was able to get them to respond to questions, specific questions, whether I say, okay, cross them if it's yes, go away from if it's no, whatever I did. And I actually got responses using them. And you can't do it yourself because you're holding like this little, this metal thing, and they're inside the metal thing. So you would have to do this in order to move it. And I'm holding it out for everybody to see just as straight as possible.
Did you ever, because I've used them, and I always tuck my elbows in.
You got to make sure you're not moving.
Right. And not moving at all. And
same when you're using a pendulum, you got to make sure you're not moving.
Now, to answer Elena's previous question, and she's stating she wants to go there so bad. Ironically, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's in Colorado, right? All right. So It's just a state over. It's not that bad. You guys should go there for your anniversary. Hint, hint. But I've used it, and I think the only time that I actually did get some activity or get it to work, a former medium I used to work with on my team, who used to work with energy. And in fact, you know, this individual, I'm choosing not to name his name right now because, you know, long story. But he even went with me when we were first helping you guys form your team, and he actually did some energy work on you guys, and he did the pull, push. He didn't do it on you, but he did it on a few other people that were there on your team. He did it on me. But one location that we were investigating called the Redland Hotel in Homestead, I remember he had a mastery of energy to where I was holding dowsing rods. I'll never forget this because I actually have it on tape. I got to look for it. And he literally put his hands around it and he made it cross, and then he made it split, and then he did this and they started spinning. And I was like, dropped it and walked away. I was like, screw this, because it's so weird. You expect it from a spirit maybe, but when a person can actually do that, it kind of makes you think, what are dowsing rods? Who came up with the concept of dowsing rods to find water in the first place? I'm, you know what? I guess that's my homework for tonight. I'm going to look that up, because I know that dowsing rods were not dowsing rods like we know. They were, it was a switch, right? From a tree.
Usually,
And
yeah. The very first ones.
It would bend down or something like that and show you where there was
water. Yeah, it would literally go like that.
And that's where people would start digging for water. So I'm going to do some research and find out when it made the switch from looking for water and communicating with spirits to entertain Elena's question here. What was the most, I'm expanding on it, by the way, the most memorable experience you had? What is it, at the Stanley or Shanley Hotel? I always forget. Stanley Hotel. What experience?
While I was there, well, the dowsing rod thing was kind of cool because I got to show off a little bit. But you
didn't see twins or anything like that?
No, when we were supposed to have a specific room, and we went to go check in, and none of our keys worked. So we go downstairs. They give us new, cards. We go back up. They still don't work. We end up calling for maintenance, blah, blah, blah. And at first they were like, this is weird. It seems like the door is bolted from the inside. And I was not scheduled to stay in one of the more haunted rooms or the more, renowned rooms. And so when the guy came up and he said, we can't get in here. It's like it's bolted from the inside. But he goes, come on, let's go find you a better room. He was a real friendly guy. We ended up with one of the most famous rooms because the tours used to stop outside our door. It was right at when you get off the elevator. And it was, a fairly haunted room. And I did have a couple experiences, including the bathroom door slamming shut in the middle of the night. And I had disturbing dreams that I think was something telling me. In this one dream, I don't remember all the details now, but we had what used to be, it probably was a balcony, but they had enclosed it. And out there, they had like a little table and the coffee maker. No plug, by the way. So I don't know why the coffee maker was out there, because there was no way to plug it in. But anyway, So in the dream, there were 3 boxes on the table. And the male spirit in the dream was telling me that something is connected to these 3 boxes. And so that was kind of, I woke up and I was like, that feels like somebody was actually here giving me a message more than just a random dream. I never felt uncomfortable. It is a place that was on my bucket list. I'm glad I went there. Once was enough. I will stay at a hotel that actually has a plug for my coffee maker next time. And but I'm glad I went. And so anybody who has an interest at all, I would go. I would go take the ghost tour and really enjoy your time. It was cold, so that part was fun too. We went up in the Rocky Mountains and there was snow, and there's just a lot of things to do. Estes Park is a cute little town. So if you ever have wanted to stay at the Stanley, go for it.
We have a question for you, Vicky, from Greetings from Beyond Radio page, and it's from Maria. Can you explain a bit on telepathic dream communication?
Between living people?
Hopefully she's still listening, but
I mean, a lot of times I think that we can show up in other people's dreams. And it's basically because you are manifesting, because your energy is kind of directed at each other at that time. In fact, it was funny the other day, I had a dream about somebody and I sent him a message and I'm like, oh, by the way, you were in my dream. He goes, that's really weird because you were in my dream last night.
mm-hmm.
So that could be that we were communicating on that level. Another thing is that possibly we were both having an OBE and we just happened to meet up at the same location in our out of body experience.
You know, it's funny you mentioned OBE, and ironically, that was my first experience. She says, between the living.
Yeah, it's because I think that you can do that if you have a close connection and you are concentrating that energy towards each other, or one person needs to get a message to that. Some people will say, oh, it's a coincidence. Like, you know how like you pick up the phone and you call somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, I was just getting ready to call you. I don't really think it's coincidence. I think that just your energies were connecting with each other, whether this person who was going to pick up the phone first was stronger and that's what made you think about it, and then you end up in the phone call. But if you concentrate your energy with people, I completely believe you can communicate that way.
I hope that answers your question, Maria. And ironically, you brought up the OBE, and that was my first paranormal experience ever, and I thought I was dreaming. And ironically, it was connected to my deceased aunt, Down syndrome. She also suffered through grand mal epileptic seizures, and she had had 13 at that time. I was asleep. I was knocked out. I was dreaming that I was in her bedroom and I was getting up from her bed, but I was shorter. I could tell I was shorter. And then that's when I realized, wait a minute, I'm looking out her eyes. And as I walked to the doorway to her bedroom, I had this blackout and a sensation of falling. And that's when I came to. But what I came to was a pounding, a constant pounding going on my door. Of course, you know, I was 15 years old. I had my door closed. Let your imagination run wild as to why that was happening. But my mother was literally pounding on the door. Rich, you need to wake up. We need to go. Ileana's had 13 epileptic seizures. They're calling the ambulance. And I heard her and I was going to respond, but I couldn't because I was not in control of my body. I had sleep paralysis. It took me a few days to realize that what I had actually experienced was OBE. My spirit was basically trying to refit itself back into its body, my body, and I had no control over my body yet. When I finally gained control, I put clothes on, put my shoes on, and I ran 5 blocks to my grandmother's house, past the ambulance on the way there, by the way, and past my grandfather that was at the front door. He was crying and went straight to her room. Guess where I found her? Right where I left her in my dream. So it wasn't a dream. It was an OBE. And that was the only OBE I've ever had, and the only one I ever plan on having, because quite frankly, that was a scary experience to say the least. But
you can't really say that that's the only one that you had. We have them quite often. A lot of them, we just think of them as dreams, but some of those were actually us traveling.
Yeah, I feel we often, I think if not, we do every night. We do leave our body, spiritually speaking. I think that's a natural thing. Question is why? Well, maybe we shouldn't remember what we see when we're out of our body. Maybe some I wish we could, and some we just shouldn't, because oftentimes I think our subconscious mind, which acts almost like a translator between spirit and our brain, is what controls what we do and do not see. And I think that also ties into psychic abilities as well. And we need that in order to function on a regular basis. What are your feelings on that?
Yeah. I know when you mentioned about psychic ability, when I first started getting my ability, I could only see human spirits. And then, but I think that was blocked specifically for me to get it in gradual doses, to be able to get used to my gift before I could open up and see these other interesting things that I have often described to you in detail.
Yeah.
But if I had seen that at the beginning, that might have scared me off, and I wouldn't have developed my gift
You
in the first
would have
place.
shut down, in other words.
Yeah. So I was given everything and I had each one of my gifts open up separately and then come together finally as a whole. So I was very much compartmentalized at first and then able to tap into the others.
I would dare to say that I think when it comes to our gifts, I've always been empathic, but I've also learned how to control it. And you kind of have to, being in the field that I'm in, not only the paranormal but demonology, when you're dealing with an inhuman spirit that knows evil spirits, or that knows humans better than we know ourselves, because they were around long before humans were created. I think it's very important for anyone that is developing or has developed their psychic abilities, be it empathy, be it psychometry, psychic, telling the future, or mediumship, speaking with other spirits. They should have control over these gifts, because if you do have the calling to be a demonologist, which I did and still do, you cannot go into this blindly. Lisa Marie tuning in. Thank you, Lisa Marie, by the way. And Irene. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I had a message. Okay, so the reason I say this is when I've had to do my testing for someone that is allegedly demonically possessed or oppressed, I am not doing the testing for that person. I'm doing the testing to see if there's something inhuman with that person, which is a lot more dangerous. And they know your weaknesses before you know your own weaknesses. And that being said, they will use that against you. So you do have to have control over your gifts. And if you wish to chime in on what I just said, go ahead. There's another question that I'll read out later.
Yeah, we've been on investigations where I've had investigators that didn't have quite as much control as I have over spirit interaction, and I've actually had to step in and get the spirit off of them because it was affecting them. It's very important to have control. You don't have to believe what I believe, but you need to believe in something. And it's those beliefs, and whatever you consider to be your protection, you have to keep that on you and well guarded as you deal with anything connected to the paranormal.
So a very interesting comment was made in the chat room by Irene Takura. I hope I pronounced that right, Irene. But yeah, I can't go out anymore because I see nothing but dead people, and it's hard without seeing things. How would you respond to that, being a psychic medium yourself?
You're going to have to start being very conscious of putting it out in the universe before you ever step out. That right now is, as silly as it sounds, right now is my time to go to Walmart. I only want to see the living. You are not allowed to communicate with me or show yourselves to me. And the more she does it and the more that she employs her protection, the better it will be and the more they will actually follow the guidelines and the rules.
So what would you recommend? Meditation? Would you recommend?
I recommend saying it just like I said it.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
just putting it out there and say, these are the rules. And of course, you're going to have people, spirits that aren't going to cooperate at first, but the more you do it and the more you have it in your mindset that you are not going to see them, and they will start following the rules. And then that's when your spirit guides need to step up a little. And they need those bodyguards that I have with the velvet ropes. You need to employ yours, and they need to do their job. Because if you're an open vessel, you can't just depend on yourself. You have to call on your protection and your spirit guides and whoever controls all that for you, because everybody's belief system is different. Like I said, you don't have to believe what I believe, but you have to believe in something. So the more that you practice it, the better you will become at blocking them and your protection blocking them.
Irene is chiming in, by the way, from Tokyo, Japan, and wow, we've gone all the way.
We're international.
We're international now, so that's great. Thank you for your question, Irene. If you have any more questions for Vicki when it comes to the spiritual side of things, I'm going to ask Jen to go ahead and put through the ticker how to get in contact with Vicki, and she may be able to help you in that area. Thank you for chiming in, Aaron Hoffman. Greetings from A View Beyond Paranormal Magazine. And wow, we have similar names, not quite the same, but we're there. Kind of, sort of. Let's see. And Irene says, thank you, by the way, if you can't see the chat, Vicki.
Yeah,
you know,
I can see it.
Okay. You know, it's I've noticed there's a lot of people here that are saying, oh, I have this gift, I have that gift. I personally believe we all have the capability of any psychic gift, be it whatever it may be. It's a matter of developing it or wanting to develop it in the first place. There's some people, and I'll include myself in on this too. I didn't want to develop my empathic side for the longest time, to be honest with you, because I felt it got in the way of me concentrating on what I wanted to get accomplished in life. But the more I fought it, the more it came back at me and forced me to say, oh, no, nay, you must acknowledge me. And I then had to start learning, not only by myself, but reading a lot of books and applying meditation, applying different techniques in order to manage it. So it didn't, if you can have that gift, but that gift ceases to be a gift when you have no control over it. It becomes a curse. Okay. That's from my personal experience. So that's my take on it.
And I think there's also, I think each one of us as individuals, we're special. I'll use this example. I maybe can take lessons and learn how to play the guitar. Okay. But I will only just be able to play it. I will never be Prince because I don't have the gift that he had for music.
He's a loss. It's a loss when he died. That was a horrible loss.
By the same means, we all may have gifts to a certain degree, but there are some that are just going to have it stronger. And no matter how much you practice, you may not reach the level of somebody else. It's just the way it is. But you have to, I think you have a responsibility. My personal opinion, think of it like your higher being, whatever you subscribe to, has given you a present. And you open the present, you look at it, and then you just kind of throw it in the corner.
Right.
Well, the person who gave you that present is going to be a little put out that you didn't continue. You didn't talk about how great that present was. You didn't use the present. You just put it over in the corner. Same thing. If you are gifted with something in particular, I feel you have a responsibility to not only use the gift that you're given, but to use it to help people, to share it with other people. It's a responsibility. That's just my personal opinion.
Agreed. Well, to quote the great Stan Lee, from Marvel Universe, with great power comes great responsibility. So, may he rest in peace. The man was a genius. Thank you, Maria Munoz. This is phenomenal, she says. Thank you very much. We've worked very hard to bring you guys quality show. And I hope you guys continue to come back and watch us, especially next week, Wednesday, same time, same place, same bat channel. We have Aaron Hoffman. How should people go about identifying something being a spirit, a PK entity, or an egregore? Sorry, had to close in on that one. How do you want to? Wow.
I would say experience.
Yeah, I would have to agree that, and there's plenty of literature out there nowadays. I remember the very first book I checked out of the library. It was ESP. It was just that, extrasensory perception, and it actually went through every single phenomenon you could ever possibly think of, including OBE. And I was like, what the hell is OB? And I looked it up, and it was out of body experience. And I'm sure you could actually identify if you have those experiences through books. And, Vicky and myself are avid readers when it comes to anything paranormal or anything self-help as well. I would recommend looking into that. But identifying something being spirit, PK, I'm trying to think of the reference PK. Poltergeist or entity? I'm not sure. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that one, Aaron?
You're talking about psychokinetic?
It could be psychokinetic, but or psychokinesis. Yeah, psychokinesis. Yeah. Well, there are some tests that can actually be conducted in a controlled environment when it comes to psychokinesis, telepathy, anything like that. But usually parapsychologists are the ones that actually perform these testings. You can differentiate between the two. If the phenomenon is happening during the time that you're communicating with a spirit, it's the actual spirit doing it, not you. If you can actually focus on something and make like a spoon bend, let's think of Matrix, and all of a sudden it just goes, and it bends. You did that. If you're communicating with spirit and something moves on its own, and that spirit is actually showing up on EVP, I got news for you. That's spirit. Again, from Irene, I agree. All my kids have the gift too, and only 2 of us practice it, while my daughter really doesn't want to see anything, so it's just her decision. Okay. And once again, it comes down to the choice. We all have this gift. I really believe that. So does Vicky and Jen and everybody that's involved in this project that we call Greetings from Beyond Radio. It's a matter of developing it and deciding to develop it. So that ultimately falls into it. Aaron says these are usually tougher to get rid of since they are usually stemming from a deep trauma that left a psychological trauma. Okay.
There's also cases that I've come across where a person is, and this is where the investigative side, the person is claiming that these things are happening at nighttime. So we come in as a team and we do our investigation and we don't get any evidence and we have this, but we've had an extensive interview with the client. I've had time to spend time with them. And this one particular case, it was because she was having repressed memories of having been sexually molested as a child, and they were starting to surface.
I remember that case. Yeah.
She thought it was, something demonic that was, actually interacting with her in a sexual manner. It was her memories resurfacing. That's why it's so, and I don't want to come off as sounding superior or anything like that. That's why it's so important to choose the right
team. This is your experience, and it has
that's validity. Why it's so important to choose the right team. If you have something going on in your home, you have to have, I have a background in psychology. I have a regular career with a diploma. I have years of experience. I have researched extensively. I have reached out to people like Rich and other people whose experiences may be different from mine in order to have an open mind to receive even more information. I worked with a shaman. That was a completely different perspective. So it's very important to choose the right team to help you. If you go on and the first thing they do within 30 minutes of being in your house and they're posting your EVP on their website, I would probably beware.
Agreed. And there's way too many teams like that nowadays, unfortunately, that just want to exploit that individual's trauma. And to answer, I hope that answers your question, Aaron. There are situations where, yes, people do have PTSD of things that have happened to them. PTSD is a trauma, and it continues to happen. These individuals, regardless of the abilities they have and what they're going through, have to go through therapy and learn how to cope with what they went through. And then in doing so, they'll actually gain control over the phenomenon that takes place with them in a indirect way, simply and only because of the trauma. I hope that answers your question. I would like to have either of you write a piece for A View Beyond. This is definitely worth more discussion with the paranormal community. Get back to us. Either one of us, Vicky and myself, we may just do it together or apart. Who knows? And you can reach us. Jen is going to go ahead and put it on the ticker. Make sure to write it down and reach out to us. My email, last I checked, is richgfbradio@gmail.com. Vicky,
and I'm using
is
Nancy, NANCY 38 Drew DREW at AOL.com, and I'm proud of it.
Whatever. Okay, so there you go, Aaron. I hope that answers your question. And yes, we'll be glad to contribute to your articles. This being said, we're running out of time. We have I'd say 5 minutes. But just to give everyone a little, kind of sneak peek behind the curtain here, next week we will be discussing the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren, two individuals that I can't speak for Vicky. I can only speak for myself. I have a great deal of respect for. They were the first ones to really blaze trails next to Mr. Hans Holzer. Yes, ironically, you read my mind. Go figure.
I must be psychic.
It must be psychic. Whatever. Okay, but okay. Hans Holzer and also Ed and Lorraine Warren were one of the ones that really, really made an impact and blazed trails for what we do today, but influenced people like Vicky and myself to do things way back in the day and into today. And we've had to adjust, but we're going to be talking about the Warrens and what their accomplishments were. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about Annabelle and a few cases that they took on. And it's going to lead into something. It's going to segue into something that I'll be very, very happy to announce next week. But you're going to have to tune in next week. I'm telling you, because if you don't tune in next week and you don't watch and listen for what I'm going to say, then you will want to tune in for the third episode, because this is just the first episode. Next week will be the second episode. So before we go any further,
I'm glad you clarified that for everybody, that there's one and then comes two.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be like 1, 4,
Oh, and people are going to figure out, if it's one thing I like to do, I like to push his buttons. He will say something, and I always play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Just for kicks and giggles.
Right. Yeah. Imagine the other finger, but you know what?
And I got a couple too.
So, and we already have a few people that have already said they definitely want to be listening in. We have Elena, who's become a quick fan of ours. Thank you, Elena. Love you. Hope you get better, hon. I know you're going through some major, bronchitis right now. Yeah.
Well, now I can't tell her if I have a reading. I can't say I'm getting chest congestion.
Oh,
you
is that
ruin that by giving me?
But you did this before I said it, so you're already feeling that. So you know what? Just stop while you're ahead. Just stop.
Yeah,
it.
and
All
you
right.
stop. Don't give any more information.
But I love Elena to death. She's great peeps. And peeps, let's bear in mind this is just the beginning of a very long journey that I plan to have Greetings from Beyond Radio on the air for a very, very long time to come. And I hope Vicky decides to stay with me when it comes to that, and I don't get on her nerves, because she does have nerves, And
I'm demanding 6 times my salary.
Hell no. So, that was funny. Okay. But yeah, we'll be talking about the Warrens next week. Be ready to go when it comes to that, because it's going to segue into the 3rd episode, which you're going to love. I promise you. It's just someone I call the boss, and it'll be the first guest of Greetings from Beyond Radio. So stay tuned. So with that being said, we're going to be breaking off into, Greetings from Beyond, into the great beyond, and hoping to see everyone Wednesday. So thank you everyone for joining. If you haven't seen the show, please watch us on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, and also go ahead and like Greetings from Beyond Radio on Facebook. That way you can keep up with whatever's coming up next. All right.
You can go ahead and like the Readings by Vicky page on Facebook as well.
Don't forget that. And Elena's already going to get a free reading.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Love you all. Remember, live life, don't let life live you, and peace be still.